Привет! Welcome to Language Fi. In this video, I'm going to talk about the most common mistakes Russian learners, especially the beginner ones, make while they're speaking Russian. I'm already feeling that this is not going to be only one video, but a series of videos because Russian is a complex language. So if you're not subscribed to this channel, please click on that subscribe button because I will be sharing more interesting content. Russian has a reputation for being one of the most difficult languages to learn. It has a very complex grammar that sometimes doesn't make any sense, that sometimes doesn't have a well-grounded explanation, and honestly can drive you crazy. And it is totally predictable when someone who has just started learning Russian is going to make lots of mistakes. Learning and speaking Russian well is a matter of practice and time. Making minor mistakes in Russian is totally okay. All in all, you will be speaking the language, people will understand you, and the main thing will already be happening, and that is communication. But wouldn't it be nice to sound closer to or just like a native speaker? And if you want to sound like one, you may need to avoid the following mistakes. So the first common mistake that Russian beginner learners make has to do with the word это. Try not to use это in places or sentences where it is totally unnecessary. First of all, let's remember what это means. Это is a demonstrative pronoun. It means this or this is, depending on the context. For example, это интересная книга. This is an interesting book. But when it comes to the sentence like this, let's say, America is a big country, some of the Russian learners, they may translate it as Америка – это большая страна. Or Мастер и Маргарита – это интересная книга. As I said, it is okay, people will understand you, but это here is totally unnecessary and you can skip it. So the proper way of saying the sentence is Америка – большая страна and Мастер и Маргарита – интересная книга. The next common mistake is matching the genders. We know that in Russian language there is this gender system, that all of the nouns, they have 3 genders, masculine, feminine, and neuter. And of course, it brings some difficulties while speaking it. And this is not an easy system to sort of get used to. So one of the most common mistakes would be using a feminine adjective with a masculine noun, or a masculine adjective with a feminine noun, which is wrong. If the noun is masculine, the adjective also has to be masculine. For example, мне нравится мой дом. Don't say моя дом or мне нравится моя работа. Don't say мой работа. Or one might say мне нравится русский культура. Wrong. Русская культура, because культура is feminine. The third one has to do with the verb говорить, which is speaking. So let's conjugate it. I speak, я говорю. Don't say я говорю русский or я говорю русский язык. Try to use the particle по. So я говорю по-русски would be the correct version. Ты говоришь по-английски. But do not use по with the words знать, to know, учить, to learn, and изучать, to study something systematically. So you should say я знаю русский, я учу русский, and я изучаю русский, but я говорю по-русски. Well, when it comes to the words to understand, write, and read, it is okay to use them with по. So, I understand Russian. Я понимаю по-русски. Я пишу по-русски. Or я читаю по-русски. The next mistake appears when someone is having a dialogue, is communicating in Russian with someone. So it appears when that person has to ask questions back. And what do I mean by that? Let's take a look at this. Привет. Привет. Как тебя зовут? Меня зовут Асель. Как тебя зовут? And this would be wrong. You need the letter A in front of that sentence. А как тебя зовут? If you want to sound more concise, you can just take the letter A and attach, sort of derive the pronoun and attach it to that letter. So, как тебя зовут? Меня зовут Джон. А тебя? Сколько тебе лет? А тебе? Откуда ты? А ты would be the proper way of saying. And speaking of age, well, most Russian learners, they make this mistake. They say я 35 лет. For example, I am 35 years old. The proper way of saying it would be to me is 35 years old. Yes, this is how the Russian logic works. So it would be мне 35 лет. For example, сколько тебе лет? Мне 35 лет. The next mistake appears when I'm talking about the weather with some of my beginner students. So the other day, for example, I asked как погода, which is how is the weather? And the student answered сегодня погода хорошо. Well, I know that he meant the weather today is good, but хорошо would be the wrong version to use here. So instead of saying сегодня погода хорошо, he should have said сегодня погода хорошая or сегодня хорошая погода. So whenever you have a noun, you have to match genders. Хорошо in Russian is an adverb and it means well. For example, I speak Russian well. Я говорю по-русски хорошо. But the weather is good. Погода хорошая. So the next mistake appears when someone is talking about in the past tense, the words was and were. As I said, there is no to be in Russian language, but there is to be. There is was and were in Russian in the past tense. Also, there is will, in the future tense. So the exception would be only the present tense. If you want to say, I was in Moscow, do not forget was and were. Я был or я была в Москве, depending on the gender. Где ты был? Я был в Лондоне. Где ты была? Я была в аптеке. So the next common mistake has to do with prepositional case when someone is saying I am at somewhere, on somewhere, or in somewhere. So do not forget about the prepositional case. Do not forget to add the letter ye to the place. So don't say я в Лондон. The proper way of saying I'm in London would be я в Лондоне, or я в Москве, or я в Мельбурне. But of course, you have to remember that if the word ends in «ия», it is an exception. You have to change it to «ии». So I'm in Russia would be «я в России». Do not say «я в Россия». The next mistake also has to do with location, but in this case, the destination. So whenever you are using the motion verb in Russian language, like я иду or я еду, try to put the destination in the accusative case, which means that if it's a masculine or neuter noun, they don't change, but you have to definitely change the feminine. So, for example, let's compare it with the prepositional case. Я в Лондоне. I am in London. Я еду в Лондон. I'm going to London. So, no any ending. Я в аптеке. I'm at the pharmacy. Я иду в аптеку. I'm going to the pharmacy. So the last mistake for today would be the usage of verbs. It appears when someone says, I like reading books or I like traveling, basically when there are two verbs. So in Russian language, you have to conjugate the first verb. For example, я люблю, but you don't have to conjugate the second verb. Don't say я люблю читаю русский or я люблю читаю книги. Try to say я люблю читать книги. The second verb has to be always in the infinitive form. For example, мне нравится путешествовать. Я люблю слушать музыку. So these were some of the most common mistakes, but not all, Russian learners make while they're speaking Russian. Please write in the comments what is the most annoying mistake that you keep making while speaking Russian. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. See you next lesson.